In the early morning hours of June 22nd, 1918, a sleepy stretch of railroad near Hammond, Indiana, became the site of one of the most horrifying transportation disasters in American history. The Hackenback-Wallace Circus was making its way through the Midwest, carrying over 400 performers and workers across the Indiana countryside. They were packed into old wooden sleeping cars, stacked bunk style, wall to wall, with trapeze artists, animal trainers, roustabouts, and clowns. Most were asleep, rocked gently by the rhythm of the tracks, and lit only by the warm flicker of oil lamps swaying above. That night, a mechanical issue forced the train to stop, right on the main track. A flatbed car toward the rear had developed what railroad men called a hot box, an overheated axle that, left unchecked, could catch fire or collapse. The conductor and his crew did the responsible thing. They stopped the train to investigate.
"I remember the conductor walking past our car with his lantern,"
one survivor later said.
"Didn't say much, just tipped his hat and kept walking, like he already knew something bad was coming."
He walked the length of the cars, checking brakes, inspecting the wheels. It was just before 4 a.m. The fog was thick, the rails were slick, and they were being followed. Not by another circus train, but by a troop transport. 20 empty Pullman cars, pulled by a steam locomotive, barreling west at high speed. At the controls was Alonzo Sargent, a seasoned engineer working for Michigan Central. He hadn't slept in 24 hours. Witnesses later described him as pale and sluggish, held together by coffee and kidney pills. He was trying to push through to Chicago, but the combination of fatigue, medication, and the hypnotic sway of the tracks proved deadly. He fell asleep at the throttle. Sargent missed the warning signals, all of them. His locomotive, engine number 8485, tore through the dense fog without ever slowing down. And then, it hit. The impact was catastrophic. The locomotive slammed into the rear of the circus train at full speed, splintering 4 wooden sleeping cars into kindling and crushing the people inside.
"The noise! It wasn't just a crash,"
recalled Elmer Grady, a nearby signalman.
"It was like a scream. Metal tearing through metal. Like the train itself was howling."
The conductor was thrown from his feet. When he looked back, the last cars were gone, smashed flat or pushed off the rails entirely. Then came the fire. The oil lamps ignited almost instantly, and within moments the wreckage became a wall of flame. Performers in bunks screamed for help, some pounding against jammed doors, others suffocating as smoke filled the remains of their cars.
"You could smell the grease paint, hay, gasoline, and then the skin. That's the kind of smell you just don't forget,"
a volunteer firefighter from Gary later told reporters. 2 signalmen stationed at Ivanhoe Interlocking, just yards from the crash, immediately telegraphed for help. But by the time the mayor of Gary and the fire department had arrived, the fire had done its work. 86 people died that morning. Most were burned beyond recognition. Only 5 victims were ever formally identified.
"We did what we could,"
Gary fire chief said.
"But the train wasn't a train anymore. It was a funeral pyre."
Many of the dead were buried under the names they traveled with. Stage names like Baldy, 4-Horse Driver, and Smiley. Their real names lost to fire and panic. Their final resting place became Showman's Rest, a quiet corner of Woodlawn Cemetery in Forest Park, Illinois. There, 5 marble elephants, carved with their heads bowed, stand watch over rows of white stone. The conductor visited weeks later, still in uniform, still smelling of soot.
"He just stood there, hat in hand,"
remembered a local gravedigger.
"Didn't say a word, just stared at the names like he could still see their faces."
As for Alonzo Sargent, the man who fell asleep, he never stood trial. Lawyers advised him to remain silent, and he did. The incident was ruled an accident, the result of extreme fatigue. He never operated another train. Survivors of the wreck, those few who escaped, rejoined what remained of the circus within a few days. Borrowed performers, borrowed animals, because the show must go on.
I got back on stage 3 days later,
said aerialist Martha the Marvel.
burned hands, blackened lungs. The crowd didn't clap much that night, but we were there.
The circus resumed its tour across America. But for those who lived through Hammond, nothing was ever quite the same. Every station stop, every flickering oil lamp, every groan of the tracks.
We rode with ghosts after that,
A veteran ringmaster said years later.
Some nights, I swear, I'd hear a laugh from a car that wasn't there.
Today, if you visit Showman's Rest, you might hear the wind whistle through the cemetery trees, like applause under a tent long gone. And if you listen closely, you might hear a chuckle, a rustle, a voice calling out a forgotten name, because not everyone made it out of Hammond, even though the circus left.